NYPD officers maintain general peace officer authority, which includes the ability to carry firearms, issue warrantless arrests, and carry out warrants both on duty and off duty throughout their respective jurisdiction. Speaking of which, they have jurisdiction as the primary municipal law enforcement agency for the City of New York. They have jurisdiction throughout the City of New York to enforce local and state laws. They derive their jurisdiction and authority from New York State Criminal Procedure Law. More specifically, I believe it was, chapter or section 140.10 of the New York State Criminal Procedure Law, in which it states, arrest without a warrant by a police officer when and where authorized. Now, obviously, this is in past tense or whatever. That's just how law is written out. But anyways, it's obviously it's referring to. It's important to note here that the two important words they said, where and when, because they could have just said that they're authorized to make warrantless arrests, but they clearly highlighted that there are restrictions, specifically on when and where they can make warrantless arrests. And essentially, the when part is referring to if the officer has reasonable suspicion to believe the suspect has committed a crime. And then essentially the where part, that's basically referring to whether the officer is within his jurisdiction. The officer must be within his jurisdiction, his or her jurisdiction, in order to make the warrantless arrests. If the officer is not within their jurisdiction, they cannot make a warrantless arrest. It's simply it would actually be unlawful. The severity of how unlawful it would be depends on agency and area. It can range from an infraction to a felony. But what's important here is that if an officer, let's say, arrests somebody or issues a ticket on somebody while outside their jurisdiction, basically that arrest or ticket can be dismissed if the person who received that ticket or arrest or their lawyer wants to pursue it in court or file a complaint against it in court. And there have been multiple cases where this has happened. But I want to make it clear right now, please do not try this on your own. Again, it's don't try this on your own. I don't want one of my YouTubers getting arrested and complaining that their YouTuber said it'd be okay. It's absolutely not what I said. Please don't do that. But anyways, there have been, with that being said, there have been cases within the past where this kind of situation has happened. A great example is, what was it? Chronicle versus, don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but Chronicle versus Levy. Probably not pronouncing that right, but anyways, Chronicle versus Levy, that was essentially a case in which happened basically after a University of North Dakota police officer conducted a felony stop on a driver for DUI and essentially arrested that driver for DUI. Now, the thing is that according to basically the suspect's attorney, had basically, after the suspect was arrested, his attorney he basically brought it up to the court, the Supreme Court of North Dakota. And basically, of course, this would be within the jurisdiction of the state courts because this involves state laws. But anyways, it would so it was brought up to this Supreme Court of North Dakota, and essentially it was brought up because the suspect's attorney basically had they had basically complained or argued that the officer, when he was making the arrest, was outside his jurisdiction. He was outside, according to the lawyer. He was outside his he was outside campus property, essentially outside University of North Dakota campus property, and therefore the arrest shouldn't be legal. Anyways, in return, lawyers from or in basically on the other side, I don't know, I'm not that good at words sometimes. The Essentially on the other side, the University of North Dakota, a lawyer for the University of North Dakota police, basically on the University of North Dakota police's side, on the defense of their side, basically argued that it was lawful because the arrest was made on a road that was adjacent or surrounded University of North Dakota campus property, and therefore should be considered within their jurisdiction. But basically, it wasn't within their jurisdiction, according to the court, or according to the court's decision. This honestly shocked me because it's not usually. I mean, usually, of course, campus police, they do have a very restricted jurisdiction, but on a road that surrounds campus property, that's really weird or out of the ordinary. I mean, and especially for the court to the court to go on the side of the suspect's attorney. Basically, who won was the suspect's attorney won. Basically, the arrest was denied because they were outside their jurisdiction and they made the arrest. But anyways, this was really shocking is because usually in the majority of U.S. states, campus police officers do have jurisdiction at the least on campus property and on roads surrounding campus property. Honestly, I found this case very, in my personal opinion, stupid because, I mean, the officer had reasonable cause to pull them over. The suspect was drunk driving. If he didn't pull him over, and I know this is we're talking lawfully here, but if he didn't pull him over, I mean, God knows what would have happened. There could have been a car crash or something. So I think the officer did the right choice, even though it was very small bit outside his jurisdiction. Literally, it was a road surrounding university property. That's why I just thought it was ridiculous. But anyways, I mean, it was kind of shocking because, in fact, in my state, in Massachusetts, university police officers have a much more expanded authority. They're actually in Massachusetts, university police officers or campus police officers have authority or jurisdiction throughout any municipality for which their respective university or campus maintains property within, which is pretty crazy compared to North Dakota. So clearly, North Dakota is very restricted on police officer jurisdiction, especially when it comes to campus police officers. I mean, it was kind of shocking to me. Of course, there have been multiple cases throughout the past. I think things like that, where people argue that the officer was outside of his jurisdiction when he made the arrest. Obviously, it is entirely okay to it's entirely okay to complain that an officer was outside his jurisdiction when making an arrest to defend yourself. But let me tell you straight off, police officers really don't like it. They think it's very tedious and annoying. But anyways, but anyways, when it comes to rules and regulations set by the NYPD, for which their officers and employees have to follow, essentially those rules and regulations and policies are basically regulated or regulated by the New York City rules. So heavily regulated by the New York City rules. So that's pretty much it for their jurisdiction and authority. NYPD officers train for approximately 25 weeks at the New York City Police Academy, which is located in College Point, Queens, New York City. During their experience at the academy, they undergo a variety of courses, including those covering firearm tactics, vehicle tactics, physical tactics, fugitive apprehension tactics, communication tactics, generic investigative tactics. I'm just trying to think of others. Cuffing and frisking tactics, and department policies. The NYPD uses a variety of tools, including weapons, uniforms, vehicles, and equipment. However, it is important to note that the specific tools used by an NYPD employee will vary heavily based upon his or her position within the department. So, for example, NYPD police officers, just to start off, considering they make up the majority of the NYPD, will generally carry, when it comes to firearms or weapons, Glock 17s as their primary sidearm. However, with that being said, some NYPD officers will also utilize Glock 19s as their primary sidearm. But it really depends on the NYPD officer, as they can carry any firearm or sidearm for which their department, for which the NYPD approves. So it's really up to the officer. But when it comes to equipment, just to list out some generic tools or equipment used by NYPD police officers. This would include handcuffs, tasers, a baton, pepper spray or OC spray, a flashlight, citation book, and that's and then also, also all NYPD officers, in fact, all NYPD peace officers, not just police officers, but also detectives too, and all sworn NYPD peace officers are required to wear body cameras when on duty. So this is a part of New York State law. All police departments and law enforcement, all peace officers sworn in the state of New York are required by New York State law to wear body cameras. So not just the NYPD, but all police departments in New York. Or peace officer certified police departments. Anyways, so again, this applies to not only NYPD police officers but also NYPD detectives. When it comes to, although I should add on, just to make it clear, because, just to make it clear, if you're an NYPD officer and you forget your sidearm or equipment at station, that's really on you, because there's nobody to remind you to bring your sidearm or equipment. It's really up to the officers whether they bring it or not. It's up to them to remember. But but when it comes to that was equipment. When it comes to uniforms, NYPD officers can generally be seen wearing, can generally be seen wearing, the majority of NYPD officers can generally be seen wearing black or navy blue uniformed patrol suits, so uniformed pants and uniform shirts, and then also a peak tat, a police badge, a radio, a wired radio, and just the standard municipal police officer uniform. So yeah, I mean, and of course also a duty belt and a firearm holster for which the officer puts his sidearm in. But yeah, that's really it for uniforms. Of course, the uniform for which an NYPD officer will vary. For which an NYPD officer uses will vary based upon the officer's choice. So some may wear traffic vests, and it really depends on what they're currently doing. So yeah, but when it comes to vehicles, NYPD officers, and this is really department wise, will generally, I mean, there are multiple vehicles used by the NYPD or that the NYPD utilizes and owns. But I mean, generally, the majority of NYPD officers can be seen using Ford Police Interspector Utilities, or FBIUs. Those, for those who don't know, are Ford Explorers generally. And then Ford Police Interspector Sedans, or FBISs. Those, for those who don't know, are generally Ford Tahoruses. And then Crown Victoria Police Inspectors, or CVPIs, as their name suggests, are Ford Crown Victorias. And then, and then also Special Service Vehicles, or SSVs. Those are generally Chevrolet Suburbans or Chevrolet Tahoes. And then also Ford F-150s. Again, there are many vehicles that the NYPD owns, but those are just some of their standard or primary ones that most NYPD officers use. I covered weapons, I covered uniforms, I covered vehicles. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I don't say something again or cover something again. And I covered equipment. But now that I wrap that up, when it comes to, although I should add on that for those who are applying to the NYPD, if you really care about whether you get to take home your patrol car, let me tell you something that you should know. The NYPD is not one of those police departments that allows their officers to take home their patrol vehicles. There simply aren't enough patrol vehicles for each officer to take home. Again, there are around, 30,000 NYPD officers and 50,000 NYPD employees, and there simply aren't enough vehicles for all those officers and employees. So, but when it comes to detectives, however, they will generally use the same firearms and equipment generally. So they're typically equipped with Glock 17s generally, and of course they also get to choose what firearm or sidearm they can use. But when it comes to equipment too, they generally use the same equipment, but they do not use, of course, or they do not carry batons, tasers, or pepper spray. And if we're talking about a homicide detective here, you can also remove citation books from their inventory because they simply don't need them. But when it comes to vehicles, they generally use the same vehicles, so Ford Police Interspector Utilities and etc. But of course, unmarked or furthermore undercover. And something important to add on when it comes to vehicles for NYPD detectives is that unlike NYPD officers, NYPD detectives are there are generally allowed to bring their patrol cars home. The NYPD has much more flexibility for when detectives bring their patrol vehicles home because there are much more there are much less NYPD detectives than there are police officers, and there are basically enough patrol vehicles for NYPD detectives, unlike police officers. But when it comes to uniforms, again, yeah. So again, they most NYPD detectives will can be seen wearing um, uh, can be seen wearing plain clothes or business suits, and generally those are detectives from bureaus covering or bureaus or components covering narcotics, homicide, transit. Let's see. Homeland Security, counterterrorism, counterintelligence, executive protection, gang violence, cybercrime, civil rights. Those are generally the ones you see wearing plain clothes or business suits, as they are generally working undercover in most cases. Yeah. But then but again, not all NYPD detectives use those. Most will wear plain clothes or business suits, but not all. So, for example, those from the Patrol Services Bureau or Transportation Bureau may be seen wearing, just generic uniformed NYPD patrol suits. So those you see a regular NYPD officer using. And the reason why they wear those is because those NYPD detectives are generally charged with traffic operations or traffic duty. So those NYPD detectives you may see helping out during a car crash, helping out control traffic during a car crash. Those are generally the ones doing that, and generally, though they will use and NYPD detectives on traffic duty, or within, NYPD detectives on traffic duty will generally use uniform patrol suits. However, they will generally use unmarked patrol vehicles. So, you may see NYPD an NYPD detective. An NYPD detective on traffic duty, controlling traffic for a car crash. You may see him wearing a uniform patrol suit, but you will also most likely see him using a unmarked patrol vehicle. That's really it for their weapons, uniforms, vehicles, and equipment. NYPD employees report through their chain of command or report structure, for which I'll get into later. But the NYPD itself, or the department itself, reports to the mayor of New York City, as it falls under the executive branch of the New York City government. So therefore, it reports to the head of the executive branch of the New York City government, which is the mayor of New York City. So yeah. The rank structure of the NYPD from high to low is in the following order: Commissioner, First Deputy Commissioner, Chief, Deputy Commissioner, Bureau Chief, Assistant Chief, Deputy Chief, Inspector, Deputy Inspector, Captain, Lieutenant, Sergeant, and finally entry level employee. The NYPD is divided into bureaus, which is further broken down, or which can further be broken down into divisions, which can further be broken down into units, which can further be broken down into subunits. Now, there are 20 bureaus of the NYPD. These 20 bureaus include the Collaborative Policing Bureau, the Community Affairs Bureau, the Crime Control Strategies Bureau, the Detective Bureau, the Employees Relations Bureau, the Housing Bureau, the Information Technology Bureau, the Internal Affairs Bureau, the Legal Matters Bureau, the Management and Budget Bureau, the Patrol Services Bureau, the Personnel Bureau, the Public Information Bureau, the Special Operations Bureau, the Intelligence and Counterterrorism Bureau, the Support Services Bureau, the Training Bureau, the Transit Bureau, the Transportation Bureau, and finally the Administrative Bureau. Now, there are some important things to note when it comes to the NYPD's bureaus. One main and important thing to note is that bureau does not dismiss jurisdiction. What I really mean by that is if an NYPD officer is in need of assistance or requires backup, another NYPD officer can respond, even if he or she is not a part of the same bureau or component. This is really because, all officers, regardless of what bureau they are a part of, still have the same jurisdiction, and that is the NYPD's jurisdiction. When it comes to legally, an NYPD officer, regardless of what bureau he's in, still can handle, still has the same case and still has the same case and territorial jurisdiction. So, for example, an NYPD officer from, I don't know, the Housing Bureau can still handle a terrorism investigation, even though that is not their primary responsibility. And that they're still allowed to do that because that's still within the NYPD's overall jurisdiction. So therefore, they still have jurisdiction over it. While they are primarily responsible for their bureau's duties, it does not dismiss their department's jurisdiction. And this applies to not only the NYPD, but just law enforcement agencies in general. Another great example is, for example, if an NYPD officer from the Highway Patrol Division gets an alert of a nearby school shooting, he or she could still respond to that school shooting, even though that's not within their primary responsibility. The NYPD still has jurisdiction over public schools in New York City, and therefore the officer still has jurisdiction over that incident. If it's taking place at a public school. But so it's really it's really relaxed, or anyways. But another important thing to note is that an NYPD officer can work for more than one bureau. So for example, let's say an NYPD officer from the Detective Bureau, for example, I'm just trying to think. An NYPD homicide detective, let's say, from the Detective Bureau, can also be a lieutenant from the Patrol Services Bureau. They can be both a detective and a lieutenant, even though they are part of separate bureaus, and that's called working, multiple bureaus. And it's basically to get a higher salary too. Anyways, that's pretty much it.